Picture a Sunday afternoon somewhere in 1974. The driveway is still wet from the garden hose, a transistor radio crackles through the open garage door, and your father is on his knees with a chamois cloth, working slow circles into a hood he's prouder of than almost anything else he owns. That car wasn't just how your family got to church, to the lake, to Grandma's house 3 states away. It was pride and status wrapped into steel, one of the few things holding steady while gas lines, an oil embargo, and a crumbling economy tested every family in America. 9 Ford vehicles quietly became part of that fight. And by the time we reach number 1, you'll understand why some original owners still keep a fire extinguisher in the trunk, just in case. So let's go back, one Ford at a time, starting with the one built for getting dirty. Number 9 is the Ford Bronco, and if you grew up anywhere near dirt roads or open land, chances are somebody's dad or uncle had one. Ford introduced the Bronco in August of 1965 to go head-to-head with the Jeep CJ5 and the International Harvester Scout, and by the 1970s, it had become the vehicle you reached for the moment the pavement ran out. The most basic version, the Roadster, didn't even have doors or a roof. Just you, a steering wheel, and whatever trail you were brave enough to take. It rode on a tight 92-inch wheelbase that let it spin through terrain nothing else on this list could touch, and it earned real respect doing it, with Ford's own off-road program putting the Bronco through Baja competition alongside names like Parnelli Jones and actor James Garner, who raced them himself. By 1977, the final year of this first generation, the Bronco had grown into a brawnier, more powerful machine with a V8 under the hood. Proof Ford knew exactly who was buying it and why. But if the Bronco was built for the family-chasing adventure, the next Ford on this list was built for the family-chasing attention. Number 8 is the Ford Thunderbird, the car that told the whole neighborhood you'd made it. Through the early 70s, the Thunderbird kept growing. Bigger, heavier, more chrome, until people started calling it the Big Bird, a 2-ton personal luxury coupe built for Sunday best. Then, in 1977, Ford did something almost nobody expected. They shrank it, nearly 10 inches shorter, nearly 900 pounds lighter, and almost $3,000 cheaper than the year before. Buyers didn't just accept it. They showed up in numbers Ford had never seen for this nameplate. 318,140 Thunderbirds sold in 1977 alone, more than the entire previous 5 years of Thunderbirds combined. It remains, to this day, the best-selling generation in the car's history. For a lot of families, the Thunderbird wasn't the car you drove to the grocery store. It was the car for church, for a wedding, for the one dinner a year where you wanted people to notice you'd pulled into the lot. Now, let's come back down to earth, because the next Ford on this list wasn't built to turn heads at all. It was built to work, and it ended up outselling every vehicle in America for decades. Number 7 is the truck that changed everything, and almost nobody noticed at the time. The Ford F-Series, and specifically the year 1975, when Ford introduced a new trim wedged between the F-100 and the F-250 and gave it a name that would eventually take over the entire lineup, the F-150. It wasn't flashy, and it wasn't even really new. It was mostly a way to dodge tightening emissions rules by slotting the truck just above a certain weight threshold. Nobody at Ford could have known what that small regulatory workaround would turn into. By 1977, the F-Series passed Chevrolet to become the best-selling truck in the United States, a title it has held every single year since. This was the truck parked outside the hardware store, hauling lumber on Saturday mornings, towing the boat to the lake, sitting in the church parking lot next to the Thunderbirds and Granadas with a lot more mud on the tires. If your father, your grandfather, or you yourself ever worked with your hands in the 1970s, there's a real chance this truck was involved. Speaking of getting noticed, though, nothing on this list turned more heads in the 1970s than what happened when Hollywood got its hands on Ford's next car. Number 6 is the Ford Gran Torino, a solid, mid-size family car nobody thought twice about. Until 1975, when a red and white Torino with a wide-angled stripe down the side started chasing criminals across television screens in a show called Starsky and Hutch. Actor Paul Michael Glaser, who played Starsky, reportedly hated that paint job so much he nicknamed it the Striped Tomato. Audiences didn't care. They loved it. Fans still say the car got more mail than the actors did. Ford noticed the demand and, in 1976, built 1,305 limited edition replicas for the public, stripe and all, and dealerships couldn't keep them on the lot. Suddenly, ordinary families wanted their ordinary Torino to look like it belonged in a car chase, and kids everywhere begged their parents for the stripe kit. 4 seasons of primetime television turned a mid-size family sedan into the coolest thing in the driveway. If the Torino was about looking fast, the next Ford on this list was about looking rich, even if you couldn't quite afford to be. Number 5 is the Ford Granada, introduced in the fall of 1974 for the 1975 model year, built on a philosophy almost bold enough to be funny. Take the humble Maverick underneath, dress it up with a formal grille, plush upholstery, and wood grain trim, then run advertisements comparing it directly to the Mercedes-Benz 280, a car that cost roughly 4 times as much. Buyers knew it wasn't really a Mercedes. They bought it anyway. Ford moved more than 300,000 Granadas in that very first year and would clear 400,000 more than once before the decade was over. For families who couldn't afford real luxury but wanted the feeling of it, the soft ride, the formal roofline, the sense of having arrived, the Granada delivered exactly that for a quarter of the price. But if you wanted the real thing, not a compact playing dress-up, but the biggest, softest, quietest Ford that money could buy, that brings us to number 4. Number 4 is the Ford LTD, and for a huge number of American families, this simply was the family car. The one that took you to Sunday dinner, to summer vacation, to grandma's for the holidays, usually in wood-paneled country squire wagon form, with the whole family and the dog crammed in the back. A car and driver road test at the time joked that riding in one felt like being sealed away from the outside world entirely. That's how much sound insulation, cushioned vinyl, and sheer steel stood between you and the road. Ford built over 400,000 LTDs in 1976, alone. It wasn't fast, and it was never supposed to be. It was supposed to swallow up bad roads and long highway miles without your kids ever waking up in the back seat. For a lot of you watching, this is the car where actual childhood happened. Falling asleep on road trips, sneaking snacks in the way back, staring out that enormous rear window at the world going by. Now, after all that size and softness, let's talk about the Ford that went in the exact opposite direction and somehow ended up saving the entire company doing it. Number 3 is the Mustang II, and its timing is almost too good to be believed. Ford unveiled the smaller, Pinto-based Mustang in September of 1973, barely a month before the Arab oil embargo hit and gas lines wrapped around city blocks across the country. Car magazines weren't kind to it. No V8 in that first year, less power, smaller everything. But while the muscle car era was dying around it, the new Mustang nearly tripled its sales figures and walked away with Motor Trend's Car of the Year award.